Roll call, please.
Derek Gherkin. Terry Lapp. Here. Trish McLean.
Present.
Todd Schneider.
Here.
Lauren Sharp.
Here.
Melissa Smith.
Present.
Connie Weingarten.
Present.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, you have before you the minutes from the previous meeting. What is the pleasure of the board?
Move to accept the minutes of the previous meeting.
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Terry Lapp. Aye. Trish McLean.
Okay.
Aye.
Todd Schneider.
Aye.
Lauren Sharp.
Aye.
Melissa Smith.
Aye.
Connie Weingarten.
Aye.
Okay, you have before you the agenda. What's the pleasure of the board?
Move to approve. I'll second.
Roll call. No, any discussion?
Yeah, just for the, just in terms of the time of the meeting, we have a presentation tonight by our architects trainer, HL, and so I'm going to have our principals hold on our principals' reports this evening. You'll still have a report from our district administration, but not our principals this evening.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Terry Lapp. Aye. Trish McLean.
Aye.
Todd Schneider.
Aye.
Lauren Sharp.
Aye.
Melissa Smith.
Aye.
Connie Weingarten.
Aye.
So next is the opportunity for audience. Anybody want to make public comment?
We'll be really quick tonight. We thought we were going to be on the agenda, but we were confused. Anyway, Therese Rich, forensics coach at the high school. And I just wanted to let you guys know we are really excited for the second time in the 4 years I've been here. We have a national qualifier. So, this is Luke Rohde. He's a junior, and we will be going to Dallas in June. So at the next meeting, we'll be presenting the information to you about what we're doing. We just wanted to plant the seed in your brains and say how excited we are that he's going to be known as Representative Rohde because he will be in the House of Representatives, and he will actually be taking the oath of office that they take in Washington, D.C. So we'll be asking you guys for some assistance.
Before he steps away, I know in previous districts in which I've served, when we had someone receive this sort of distinction, often they would give us, you know, a brief flavor of what his speech is going to be.
Yeah.
Could you do that at the next time we get together?
Oh, I can do that now if you'd like.
Sure.
You want to do it now?
Yeah.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Hi. So I'm fortunate enough to be able to go to national speech and debate for congressional debate. And what that means is right now I have no idea what I'm going to be speaking about. Because soon enough we're going to get our docket of all the bills and resolutions that we're going to get a debate at that meeting, and well, the several meetings over those days. And I will then get to prepare my speeches on each of those items. And it's very much like a school board meeting where, you know, you stand, you make your speech, you sit down, and eventually you vote. And hopefully it's different than the school board meeting because nothing gets passed in congressional debate, but I don't know. Not officially passed, but so yeah, that's what I'm going to do. Is I'm going to do congressional debate.
Congratulations.
Great.
Congratulations. Good
He
luck.
will be preparing on approximately 37 items of legislation.
Oh boy.
So.
Good
luck.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
best
good luck.
best wishes to you.
Yeah.
What an honor.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So excited.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
One other thing I wanted to say, we did distribute the yearbook today, and if you guys would like a copy, I'll send it over here to the district so you guys can take a look at it. I haven't gone through with a fine-tooth comb yet, but I don't think there's anything in there that's going to get us in trouble. I know there are no inappropriate quotes. So we'll send that over for you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Is there anybody else like to make a public comment? Okay, next on the reports, It doesn't look like our high school representative is here this evening. So any board reports? Superintendent, Dr. Hammock.
Click on this real quick. So, where is Brian? Brian, do you want to give a real quick update on one-to-one? I have you on my page here, but.
I may do both places at once.
Okay.
I need to fix the microphone. First of all, we placed an order for 1,800 Chromebooks. Around 1,500 of them are going to be used for the one-to-one. We received such a good price on them that the schools went in and purchased additional ones on top of that. So we got a really good bargain. It was the Lenovo's like we had looked at that have the screens that flip around back and the touch screens. So we'll be providing those for both the staff and the students at the 3 schools that we're bringing on one-to-one. We also took and did some demos of our learning management system. We're still not sure which one we wanted. We did the demos right before spring break, then we went right into from spring break into spring testing. So we're getting demo accounts set up so that we can bring a few of the teachers in to actually put a class in and set it up so that they can make sure that they pick the one that they want to use. It's been a little harder than I expected getting demo accounts, but we're almost there. Let's see. We've also are pricing right now a few Chromebook carts because the middle school will kind of be doing a quasi one-to-one, but they'll have a place for them in the building for the carts. Some cases, some wireless hotspots, and also GoGuardian software, which allows the machines to go home and it still protects them and keeps them underneath SEPA, which is our Child Internet Protection Act. So since we receive federal money from E-rate, we have to protect our machines that way. Also, it allows the teachers to be able to broadcast an image to all of them in the class so that they can't do anything but watch what the teacher's wanting them to see at that time. We're also, the administrators are right now in a process of going through training on the blended learning, on how to support the teachers that will do the blended learning. We also had our initial kickoff for blended learning for our pilot group. The pilot group will go through this entire process first before we bring in all the rest of the teachers. But we have volunteers that wanted to be on the pilot, so they will train this next school year. The following school year, we'll then bring the rest of the staff in on the blended learning. So we're making lots of different progress. It's just time consuming. Any questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So item 2 is just, again, just to bring to the board's attention in accordance with our policy that our evaluation of, or my evaluation of our administration, which is our principals, our assistant principals, and then our district administration, and then my administrative assistant. I've almost completed that work. I think it's been a very, very good process through the state of Colorado system. Our principals are able to do a self-assessment on the state's rubric, and then I follow that up with my own assessment. They set professional practice goals. They set an empirical or a quantitative measure through a student learning objective, which people, for example, some people have used our computational mathematics through DIBELS as a measure this year. I think by the time we move into next year, we'll probably the majority of our principals will be moving into a measure based on NWA MAP, where we'll have growth data on our students. But it's been a very good process. It really allows me an improved opportunity to get a better understanding of the principal's work and the assistant principal's work in all of our buildings. And again, I think that probably the strongest piece of the whole process is the reflective component, where we get about 6 or 7 chances over the course of the year just to talk with one another and kind of progress monitor how we're going, and then I'm able, I think, to assist them more specifically, and they're also able to bounce things off of me as they're moving forward, as they're all very capable of very high-level independent work. And then we do the same thing, or we do it, well, excuse me, then we do an evaluative model as well at our district office, which typically is more so based on their job descriptions for the various individuals, and we talk about the different projects that they're doing and how again, we progress monitor with one another on how those are coming. But I'm just down to, I think, 2 or 3 of them, and then that process is done. But it's been a very good process for all of us. And they've done, our people, quite obviously, they wouldn't be in those jobs if they weren't very, very competent. They've done very, very well. Update on capital projects is next. And again, that looks something like this. You can see we've got some of these areas where we've got a hold on those projects just because we're working with Trainer on some of the projects where there's a hold are just much, much larger projects, be they, the entranceway and or classrooms and or the Legion Field complex. So those are real big projects that as we've talked, we're probably at least a year away from implementation on those with the various requirements from state of Colorado for submission of planning and approval of planning, etc. But you can see where we have like a bold type that's in italics. Those are projects that we believe we can do internally, and Mike Bailey and Mark Clapper and their team, our maintenance team, has already begun the process of moving forward. So we have some window replacements, for example, over at the Sherman School. We have carpeting. We're planning on carpeting the entire first floor of the Fort Morgan High School, as well as all of the stairwells at the high school. And that assists us in a number of ways. The stairwells, for example, we have some areas on the stairwells where you have some damage to the lip or the front piece of the stair, and we can replace those, and we don't have to match it now, and then we'll just carpet over that. I think it will be better for aesthetics purposes. It'll be better for safety purposes. It's probably a little easier for our maintenance and custodial staff to keep clean. Under classrooms, I do have an update to the science classroom for this summer, but that's not going to occur. We know with the documents that we need to obtain from state of Colorado, we can't get that done. But Trainer's going to be giving an overview of their findings on capacity, and they did some enrollment projections for us as well. And then this classroom piece, we'll talk more about that in just a bit. We do have some emergency lighting that Mike Bailey's moving out on. Again, you can see Sherman, Baker, Columbine, Green Acre schools are going to get replacements on emergency lighting, and then Pioneer needs some parking lot lighting that we're going to be getting done for this summer. We have some restroom work at least with these valves, and then with replacement of some of the stalls there that have rusted over at the Pioneer School. I'm not sure where we stand on this lower common restroom remodel. That might be, again, a year off, just with the scope of that project to do it right. We're going to be going into our walls there and addressing asbestos issues in those walls. We've got our piping we've got calcification that has built up fairly significantly in our piping. And so it's impacting water movement and water pressure, and we've got to upgrade those restroom facilities. There is a new driveway for traffic flow at the Sherman School that we're going to be addressing in collaboration with City of Fort Morgan. There is a storm grate for the Lincoln High School from water runoff that's impacting their sidewalk areas. We have walls. Mr. Chisholm and I talked about this just earlier today. We're going to be painting the interior there over at the Fort Morgan High School, and then Mrs. Badakian and some students as well are going to be putting up several murals for us over the course of this summer. Again, just to make our interior at the high school look nicer. We have an ED classroom at Baker where we need to do some minor wall repair too, and then we get down more into roofing issues with some water issues over at Green Acres from the cap or one of the rooftop caps, heating valve issues, and this is getting more into our HVAC system that needs to be repaired. We have some boiler chiller work that needs to be done. Again, you can see the Legion Field Complex. We've got a hold on that. We do have some minor fencing. I'm not sure if we're going to be getting to that. All of our elementary schools have basketball courts that are asphalt, surfaced basketball courts, again, that are breaking down on us, and the plan is to saw cut and remove those basketball courts over the summer and put down a cement pad. And then we also may want to look at some sort of a sport court that goes over that cement pad for our students. Potentially looking at some reader boards from Nevco, but that's a little ways down the list. I haven't highlighted that, but that is a potential. We do have a replacement of a phone system that Mr. Amack has talked to you about before. We have a Morton, we're looking as well as doing a Morton building over at the Fort Morgan High School, just because we're running out of storage. Mr. Chisholm buys too much equipment, so we're running out of storage there. And electricity issues, cooler and freezer issues for our that's Baker, but I know we have one here at the district office too with a warehouse freezer door that needs to be replaced. Those are projects, though, that we have planned to do just through general fund with our set aside funds for maintenance for this summer. So questions on capital projects? Again, those are not our large capital projects list that we'll talk to you more with after Trainer does their presentation. Any questions?
Just a clarification, Dr. Hammack, the Morton building is in reference to a metal skin facility. Right. We have multiple builders in our county area who will be solicited bids for that project. So Morton is like Kleenex. There's different brands of Kleenex. So we'll be sending out bids to all of our local steel manufacturing, building erecting firms to get their proposal on that project.
We're also looking at doing some as we do the carpeting work, we're looking at doing some, I don't know, branding. Is that an appropriate term? I know I'm in agriculture area here, but it's branding for our Fort Morgan High School with our Mustang sign. We would put that on some of the entrance mats as people come into the school. We're also looking at some of the window clings that would have the Fort Morgan Mustang insignia, and then it could say things such as service, commitment, resilience, inspirational messages. And we're working with a local company on that. And the last project that comes to my mind is that we are trying to work to clean up the stone or the granite sign out in front of the Fort Morgan High School. It's denatured on one side of that sign, and we want to clean that up. All right. And then the last one, just so the board is aware, I meant to upload these from Bev, but we have posted our beginning of the year documents. We've completed them. They're under administrative review right now, aren't they, Bev?
The beginning of the year schedule's been sent to all district employees.
Okay. Okay. And then we have a secondary schedule that we're still detailing, which is our summer professional development schedule. We have some professional development training that we want to move out on this summer, just so we hit the ground running come August. Okay.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank
Hammack.
you.
Next on the agenda is the Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum and Assessment. I see she's not here, but there's several reports. Is there?
That's me.
That's
Oh.
Shelley.
Sorry.
Okay.
Okay, so assessment update to start with. So we're all finished with SAT, PSAT, and CMAS. We had a little bit more trouble with CMAS this year than we've had in the past with some Pearson technology issues, but everything is all packed up and sent back and good to go with that. Head Start.
Do you know which one of these? Should I be opening up any of these?
I didn't know she had anything to open. No, those are all Head Start documents, which you don't have to open. They're
Okay.
for the board.
Okay.
She said they will be coming every month for you, so you can look through them, and so those are expected to come from Michelle Forrest
you.
every month into your board documents. And then Capturing Kids' Hearts is the next on her agenda, and the high school is really the one that's going for that, and I think they kind of decided today, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, to maybe wait for full implementation, maybe not start full implementation next year, but maybe the following year, and do some small things, or is that correct? Yeah. A lot of things going on, and so I think they've decided that maybe with all the training that would go along with Capturing Kids' Hearts, a couple-day training for your entire staff and sending more people out to get more training, and so I think they've kind of held back on that just a little bit, so they're not going to maybe fully implement Capturing Kids' Hearts at the high school next year. And then the last thing on her agenda is the wellness grant, and happy to say that they offered the position to Jill Matlock, and she accepted that position today, and sounds like she's got a lot of good experience with some wellness programs and things like that, so that's going to be a very exciting addition to our staff. And I will try to answer any questions. I don't know if I can, but I will. If you have any. Nope. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Mr. Lee.
If you'll go to your financial statements, you have in front of you the February financial statements. If you'll go to page 1 of the report, general fund, major focus of our operation, ended the month of February, the general fund deficit of $400,000 before transfers, $600,000 after that. Year to date, we are at $1,819,000 deficit. This will be the last month before we start to round our corner on our property taxes. And if you look under the expenditure section, far right-hand column, total year-to-date budget, $16,040,000. Percentage of that compared, we should be at 66.67%, and we're running about 64.69%, so we're running about 2% under budget on our total compensation. And I went out and we just closed out April's payroll, and I've done an updated review of that. and that percentage has increased from about 2% up to about 2.5%. So that's going to add savings to our general fund for 2018-19. If you remember, a couple months ago, I did a multi-year analysis of expenditures to date, looking at our percentages, and showed that we were going to be under budget on our compensation, and of course that translates to benefits. So it looked like we'd move from a small deficit to surplus for 2018-19, and that's where we're going to end up. We're just have not been able to achieve our full employment of our budgeted salary, so we're going to see a little bit of a surplus for the 2018-19 year. Everything else pretty straightforward, nothing really out of the ordinary, I guess, as far as historical financials.
Okay. Questions? Thank you. Mr. Boyer.
Thanks. I think we'll start with the open positions document. This is just, I'll just speak to certified. There's a couple classified positions on here, but so far we've hired 12 certified staff. So we had 12 total openings in Columbine, and there's 6 open now, and 6 have been hired. At the Fort Morgan High School, we have 10 total openings with 1 already hired. That was a social studies position, a new position for our sophomore academy. Sherman, we had 2 total positions. We've hired 1 kindergarten teacher. We're looking for a preschool teacher there. Fort Morgan Middle School, there were a total of 5 positions open. We've hired 3. And Baker had 2. We've hired 1. Pioneer has 3, still has 3. And Green Acres has 3, still has 3. And then you can see the District Support Center openings, registered nurse, occupational therapy assistant, and a SPED teacher in an alternate setting. And that's replacing the Converge school that closed down. So still looking for 30 certified positions, and I understand we'll have a few more resignations here coming down the pike. We've gone to several job fairs. We are reaching out to 2 companies. One is called Greenheart Exchange, and it's an international exchange program where you can get J1 candidates. They do ask the districts that enroll in that program to pay the fees for their international teachers, and that is upwards around $2,500. And then we looked into another company, Global Academy. This came by way of Principal Nick at Columbine, and similar costs there if we wanted to go with some international teachers. We certainly would appreciate ATLP candidates. Those are alternate teacher candidates, and we might want to consider maybe paying a portion of their costs to enroll in the program. It's a $6,000 cost. Typically, we've had them pay $500 out of each of their checks over the course of the year. But it's a good way to get people into the field. They do need to pass a praxis, have a bachelor's degree, have a contract in place, and then we can start going forward with them. Boy, word of mouth, I know there's a lot of folks just out there beating the streets for us, so if anyone hears of anybody, we'd love to entertain their application. As far as subs, that's the PowerPoint that was also included. We had a very successful sub meeting. We invited our current subs, about 25 of the 50 or so showed up, and we did a little training with them. Here's the agenda. Dr. Frasco did a safety, security kind of update with them, and then I did some other training, such as adult sexual misconduct. We talked about legal issues, etc. And then that last slide there, number 4, just shows the latest and greatest fill rates. I showed you this, so a couple months back I added March and April. Since then, comparing 17-18 last school year to this school year, and we're still in that 80 to 95% range. On any given day, we're always a little short. We currently have 52 subs, and then 6 other subs that are filling long-term positions for the district, And as I've said in the past, our guess is that we would need another 50 to get to 100% fill rate. We did have 2 people show up at that meeting. It was a special half hour. I should say one person showed up, one called me by phone and couldn't make it, but 2 people expressed some interest in becoming subs. We're in the process of getting a banner hung and just the word out that we need all the help we can get, and we'll continue to hire subs throughout the summer. We'd be happy to sit down with people, let them know what it entails, and we may be talking to you about a slight increase maybe to our sub daily rate. We currently pay $115, which is very competitive, $115 per day, and then $168 per day for long-term subs. When the base goes up, the long-term sub rate goes up in accordance, just because it's a percentage of the base, and same with the daily rate. So anything we can throw at that, I think, would behoove us to get more interest, and then just an ongoing conversation about how we compensate teachers who are filling in. We do that really well at the high school, but not so well in other places. So just keep that top of mind. And then finally, on June 3rd, we'll have a presenter here from Employers Council. They are the folks that are helping us with our salary survey. The gentleman, John Curtis, will present the findings. He and I did a fairly long conference call the other day, just rounding things out, tying up some loose ends. We had hoped to have it done by April 30th. That obviously has come and gone, but he will be at June 3rd meeting to discuss the results. And that's it from my department. Any questions that you all might have for me?
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is the English Language Development Director. So I guess you're up again, Ms. Lapp.
Want this opened up? Do you want the access?
Yeah, you can open it if you want to.
Okay.
It was just more for information as I kind of went through it. So the top table that you have are just the total number of students tested, kind of interesting information for you to see. So these are the results that we got back. And so we tested a total of 751 students. Those are not our only English language students. Remember that we have kids on monitor for a couple of years before we can officially consider them non-ELL students. So there's a lot of kids on monitor year 1 or monitor year 2, so that'll get us up over 1,000 for numbers. And then at the next table down below is kind of the one that was the one I wanted to share with you the most. So redesignation means we're taking those students out of ELL and putting them into the monitor year 1. And so I was pretty excited about some of the numbers that we have here. So, you know, the total number of kids going into the monitor status, possibly this will fluctuate just a little bit as the teams meet. So there needs to be a language assessment team at every building. You look at not only the scores and the designations given by the state of Colorado, you have to look at the literacy score and the overall score. They have to meet a certain number, and then you can consider those students for redesignation, and then you add a body of evidence making sure that they're successful in the classroom and those kinds of things, and then they can go into that monitor status. So 134, and the bottom table does not have Sherman in it because Sherman does not have any kids ever that really qualify for redesignation, though you did have one that was really close, which was kind of exciting. He was a 3.3, so he was really close, which was interesting, but they don't usually have any kiddos, so I just didn't include them in the table. But 134 out of 677 students, which is 20% of our kiddos moving into the monitor status, which is exciting. Yeah, lots of good data. So we will spend lots of time tomorrow in our ELL meeting going over data, looking at growth, looking at students who maybe didn't make any growth or stayed stagnant, and what can we do with those kiddos for next year, and some plans for things like that. Any questions? Good job.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Ms.
you.
Meagle?
Thank you.
Just a couple programs that I've been working on. Significant support needs in our transition services for special education. I've been working with CDE to bring them out, so we are moving through action plans with that. Our transition program, we actually did a presentation at the state directors meeting in April. They liked how we've put things together, how we come together as a community, so we have community resources tied into that. And we're talking about doing resource fairs and basically creating resources for our families. So we've been asked to actually participate in a Zoom meeting that CDE is presenting elsewhere. So we'll be participating in that hopefully this week. Converge Kiddos, we do have a plan for next year, so that's a positive. We know we still don't have a placement for them outside of our district, but we've come up with a creative way to help meet their needs here. So we are excited about that. Co-teach training we have coming up, so the teachers that are doing the co-teaching will actually have a half day of training with the group provided through CDE. So the CDE has been helping us a lot to meet some of these needs, and that's been a wonderful partnership there. And then let's see, CPR, we're looking at moving to an online refresher so that there would be a portion that's online and then a portion that is a skills-based. That'll help us with cost and with time for employees. So that is something that I'm currently working on. We also are looking at doing an immunization clinic, one for the DTAP or TDAP, get my letters all backwards, the TDAP, and then also flu shots to be made available for students here at the school, which will help. And for gifted and talented College for Kids, Randy is working really hard getting that all put together. She's got some great things coming up. So that's it from our department. Yes.
TDAP is short for?
You don't need to ask me.
Tennis, diphtheria, and attenuated pertussis.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, I didn't know.
Didn't have anything else, Mr. Amack?
Health person.
Mr. Amack, are you good with, got everything you had? No principal reports. So next is a presentation by Trainer. Updated information regarding district facilities and grounds.
So, Patrick and Chad, I'll let you folks. Well, they've got a presentation. Yeah, we got to switch. Are you going to? Oh, you going to do it?
Yeah, I think Patrick has a. He'll need to switch computers.
Okay. Okay.
I can get started while he's in progress, but it's wonderful to be here, and I know we haven't formally met, but I'm Chad Novak with Trainer HL, and this is Patrick Johnson. We're both principals in the firm, and it's a pleasure working here in Morgan. Actually, tonight when I walked in, Harrison said to me, "Do you have an apartment here now? Because we've been spending so much time here kind of looking through your facilities, trying to understand the condition of your facilities, the needs, the enrollments, projections, capacities, all of that data, and trying to get up to speed with you to date. Your master plan, I believe, in 2011, we're dusting that off, and we're evaluating the enrollment and capacities currently. So we have some information tonight to share with you regarding that. Patrick will get into that here in a minute. But really, we wanted to give you just a brief update. We actually were meeting in Dr. Hammock's office with the principal group and on Friday, and we're going over this information, and Dr. Hammock asked us to come back tonight to give a brief update. So it's nice to be back. And I don't have an apartment here yet, but I'm looking. So we are scoped to really understand the Legion Field property, the conditions, what issues there may be regarding that complex. It's a wonderful complex that you've acquired. It really is an amenity that you don't see in school districts across the state. The level of fields and amenities on that site are tremendous, all on one site. It's really fabulous. But it does need some love and care, needs some upgrades, and that's very natural with any really site that's living out in the elements day to day. And so some of the things that we're looking at are Drainage issues, there's a variety of drainage issues, both on fields, baseball fields are indicative of that. Parking lot areas that are holding water, you kind of have a mini lake or a little pond over on the east side. There's fencing and security at the north edge with the baseball complex, and also you do have a lot of existing fencing that we're looking at. Does some of that need to just simply come down? And so we're looking at fencing, ADA access, making sure that folks with handicaps can get to the viewing areas to watch the events. And so there's a variety of ADA issues on that site. And potentially a new soccer field and concessions area that would, there's regulations on concessions and how far concessions should be away from both sides of the field. So not only home, but also visitors and that travel distance. So we're evaluating Legion Field extensively. What's currently underway is a topographic survey. We don't have anything to work from as far as how the land is moving and swaled, so that we can look at the existing conditions. A civil engineer is working on a survey, and we should see that here in a couple weeks.
Yep.
So that's the progress there. We
we've got, and I know when you're saying ADA, we've got pretty extensive restroom upgrades out there, and then we have those visitor bleacher areas, and then I think you mentioned the boundary with the goats.
Yes, so I
just had to throw that one in there.
Yeah, on the south side there. Yes, so it looks like the south edge of the site is a nice area for a new soccer complex or a new soccer field, and so there is some neighbors that
I'm kidding.
Some property lines. We're trying to understand where exactly the property line is in that location because it's not well defined. And so the survey is definitely going to help us out on that. Dr. Hammock mentioned restrooms, bleachers. We know the home bleachers have been upgraded, but the visitor side is definitely not ADA compliant. So there's a variety of issues, and we'll know more here shortly.
Thank you.
We looked at the high school. Our main piece of that was really to look at the entry and the condition of the entry. Accessibility, security is absolutely critical this day and age. And not only security inside the building, but security outside the building with icing and the elements of snow and buildup, sidewalks that are in disrepair and are hazardous for anyone that's coming to the school. So we began to look at the high school as far as its main entry. That led to, is there the need for additional classroom space in the high school? What is the capacity of the school? What is the projected enrollment? And so that got us thinking, well, we should really dig into that component. And so that's going to lead to what Patrick's going to go over here in a second. Then the third scope was to look at Columbine. And Columbine Elementary, we got a good tour with Nick and his group at the elementary, and started to look at if there are additions, if there's capacity issues that are telling us that an addition is necessary, that there's some tightness, maybe a bit of crowding. Where could that addition happen? How could it happen in a smart way so that it leads to a plan that's proper for future growth? So through that, with the high school question of do we need more classrooms, which was a big general question, And then the Columbine question about we feel very pinched and Columbine feels like it's overcrowded. That began our study of we really need to dig in, take a deep dive through the 2011 master plan. Bev has provided immense amount of information on enrollment projections, and we've taken that information and looked at the capacities of the school. So how many students can a school physically carry, and then weighed that against future enrollments. And that's kind of told us some things. And it's probably not a shocker to you when you see the data, what we're going to show. But that's a really brief overview of the scope of the 3 projects. And I'll let Patrick kind of do a dive through the data. It's kind of the nerd part of architecture, which is really understanding the numbers first before you start sketching and doing that side of the design work. So
I think Chad just called me a nerd. Is it okay if I sit and don't talk into that if I'm loud? Can you guys
Sure,
hear me
yeah.
if I'm facing this direction?
Yes.
So I think this information was already shared with the board and maybe the community in advance of this meeting. So this is the same basic information that, you want me to come over here a little more? How about I do that? Is that good? Well, I maybe can. I just want to be able to drive a little bit. Yeah, okay, there you go. So this first diagram, we really have 3 basic diagrams we want to walk through today. The first one is really the school, each school's capacity, and it's really based on what the district has already laid out in terms of an ideal maximum number of students per grade, and then how many classrooms are in that school, and you get a capacity number. Then we want to look at historic enrollments for these, and then we want to look at some projections. And I'm doing this live with the spreadsheet here, and you guys, if you would like, we can play with some different projection growth numbers, because that's really looking into the crystal ball that is difficult for all of us. But in short here, and stop me if this is, if I'm going too quickly, but you can see each school, Sherman's at the top, it has 26 core classrooms, and basically taking a number of students per class type. So in kindergarten, for example, the district has said 21 is kind of your ideal maximum, 12 classrooms, 252 students. So you get a capacity of that school based on some enrollments. Columbine has 17 classrooms. 3 of these are dedicated daycare, which is a bit of an issue. But again, students per classroom, I think, is 22 for first graders, second grade, third grade, and 24 students in a classroom for the 4th and 5th grade. So you end up with a mathematical average there of 22.8, assuming that your grades or classrooms represent all of those grades kind of equally. So again, 388 at Green Acres. Pioneer has 2 modulars, so that we are counting 2 of those classrooms, as, which I know is less than desirable, but gives you a capacity of 342. Baker, 547. And so what you end up with is a total elementary school capacity. This is just grades 1 through 5 of 1664. Moving down, you have a new middle school. The total build-out capacity there, and we reviewed this with the administrators in more detail. We could go through the math here if you'd like, but 922, the capacity, and this is actually from the 2011 master plan for your high school, 932, and we've confirmed that. And then Lincoln, 5 classrooms there, little smaller class size, a capacity, again, out of the master plan of 67. So kind of the so what of this, if I unhide some slides here, we can start to look at what's your enrollment this year, and kind of what is your percent of use, if you will, for each school. So Sherman, you're basically at 89% mathematically. Columbine, 90%, although this is using 17 classrooms. Let me unhide one more thing here. 3 of these dedicated daycare classrooms, so if you take those out of the mix, because they're not used during the school day, you actually only have 14 classrooms that are being used for grades 1 through 5 in Columbine. So that gives you a capacity number of 319, and your current enrollment is 348. So again, that's showing, again, what we were told right away. You've got capacity issues at Columbine. This is demonstrating that. However, if you were able to somehow get those 3 dedicated classrooms in the mix, then you're more like 90%, which is still, and so we're not trying to tell you, obviously, point to a solution here. These are just data. So the school does have 17 classrooms that could be used, and if that was the case, you would be at 90%. Just moving down, I would point out that Baker is very underutilized for whatever reason. You have 294 students there at a capacity of almost 550, so 54%. And then the other big one that's kind of jumping out to us, well, the middle school, you have 679 at a capacity potential of 922. So I don't know why that says NA. It shouldn't say NA. Let me drag that down. Oh. There we go. But the real concern here is at the middle school, or I'm sorry, at the high school. This year you're at 927, and your capacity is 932. So you're basically at capacity in terms of the classrooms at the high school, according to this data. Any questions about that? So just moving on then, looking at your kind of historic enrollment, looking back and kind of what's been happening. So this chart, forgive me as I get us positioned here. Let me move this over so it's not. The top of this chart shows by school, and then the bottom of the chart shows by grade. Hopefully that's not getting too small for everyone. And you can just see the changes over the years. The 1-year change here, and again, this is not unusual to see different class sizes come and go, so you have some 1-year changes. Some classes go down, some go up. Pretty big change, obviously, at Columbine, where we understand that you have a dual immersion program that you've been introducing, and that's been growing every year. Looks like about 50 students a year. So again, we expect some more growth there for coming here in August, September. And then just looking down at by grade, you start to see, I've highlighted here the classes that are 220 students or less. And you can see back in 2014, you had quite a few of those classes. And as we move forward in time, your class sizes are obviously getting bigger. On average, in 2014, your class size was 228. You're now in the 244 average. But what you start to see is some large cohort classes that are starting to move through here. So kindergarten in 2016 becomes first graders, becomes second graders, and so on. And so we have some large cohort groups here that are starting to move through your system, as I'm sure you're all very familiar with. So on average, I don't want to spend a lot of time just number crunching here, but you have district-wide had a growth of 3% in 1 year, which is pretty substantial. Just looking back at the previous 4 years, which is what's highlighted here in green, you've been just under 4% in 4 years. So an average of, or I should say in 3 years, that's 3 years of change. So basically 1.27% a year has been your average before this last year where you've really jumped. So the real question, or I guess what we're seeing as architects, is it's a confirmation of what Dr. Hammock originally told us, that there's concerns about your classroom capacity at Columbine, so what's the best way to solve that, and some concerns, or at least some questions about where are we with the high school and are there capacity issues. So this is just kind of confirming that. As we then move this over and start to talk about projections, and again, we can share this spreadsheet and we can play with it some, change the data some if you'd like. We've put in here just a simple growth rate of what your previous 4 years have been, which is 1.28% basically. So if you continue to see that, not the 3% that you've just seen, what does that start to do to your elementary school totals, middle school totals, and high school totals? And you can see the cohort group here where your large cohort next year, your second graders become third graders. You also have a large fourth grade class now that will become fifth grade. And you can see how they begin to move through the system. So what we have down below here is a total capacity of all your elementary schools. This is not trying to solve it by school. But what this shows is even if your growth continues at 1.28%, and we can change the numbers if you'd like, you don't hit your elementary school capacity in terms of a total district capacity. Now, this might start to get into some political sensitive things about redistricting and some other things, but just from a total district capacity standpoint, we don't see that you have an issue at your elementary school level. Middle school level is a similar story. You have a very nice new middle school with a lot of capacity. The only one caveat I would say there is your number of lockers, and I understand every student uses their locker, is 750. And so next fall, basically next summer, you're going to need to install some lockers to handle this growing cohort group that, as you can see, kind of moves through the system. So you get to, using these numbers, 842, which is still quite a bit below the capacity at the middle school. But again, your issue is kind of at the high school. You're really right at that capacity level. I should say the other thing about the high school, and some of this data assumes we're getting 28 kids in each of those classrooms. We haven't surveyed all the classrooms, but we understand they are a smaller classroom size. So typical classrooms, would be 850 to 900. We understand your high school is closer to 700, 750.
Square feet.
I'm sorry, square feet. So just from a planning standpoint, we look for about 30 square foot per high schooler. So anyway, these numbers are based on what your goal is, 28, I think your max goal per classroom, 28 per classroom. We suspect that if you have 28 kids in some of those classrooms, it's very tight. So in reality, your capacity may not be as much as 932. It may be a little lower, but some of this gets probably needs to go to the next level of investigation. But in short here,
Patrick,
I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
Deb, these numbers up here now, they don't have your your Head Start numbers in them.
No.
And that's another, how many children?
108.
And that includes both sessions?
Yes, that's total enrollment.
Okay, so another 108 on all those numbers every
yeah,
year.
So this just has the kindergarten. It doesn't have any of your Head Start or preschool numbers, that feed that. So those are shown, and some of this is information we get and don't get from CDE. So CDE reports on kindergarten, but they don't report, so these are your enrollment numbers as I understand them. And again, I'm not sure which of these are Head Start and which of these are your other preschool program, but just in terms of kindergarten versus the other at Sherman.
Those actually look like they only reflect programs without Head Start numbers in, which is what's on. They're just the other district preschool kids, 3, 4, and 5-year-olds.
And so, I would say, we can certainly continue to refine this with better data. I think it's kind of was a snapshot of where we were on on Friday, and Dr. Hammock thought it would be of use to at least show this to this group. So again, we can change this growth number. We can kind of change what you think your feeder numbers are into kindergarten. But I think that just to finish here, and then I'll stop, just you can see the high school numbers where they start to go beyond, well beyond the 932, which we think is a questionable number based on classroom size. So anyway, that's kind of the where we're at this point. Questions or?
Yeah. So I guess just to follow up with what Patrick and Chad have said, and I again, this is information that we've been talking about, trying to get our heads around as to what are the numbers actually say. Again, my take on this is that, like they're saying, we have capacity at our middle school over, what does that show out there, about a nine-year period of time, a 10-year period of time?
Yeah.
We have capacity at our middle school. We have capacity throughout our elementary school total area, but again, it regards redistricting, if that's the decision the board makes at the end of the day, it's significant redistricting of students and looking at that Baker school, and there may be several different options there, throughout our district with our elementary schools. But I think, to me, the other very, very significant takeaway, and we talked about this as a team in my office last Friday, there were several of us, and I think the other real challenge is, we know that the district does not have the bonding capacity to go out and build a new high school. Just that, I think it's a $25–30 million bonding capacity. Isn't that right, Mike? Something in that range. And a new high school is probably at a minimum $75 million, at a minimum. But that high school is going to, I think Harrison and I talked about this, 945 probably at a minimum to start the next year, or something in that area. What did you project there, Chad and Patrick? What did you project?
Yeah, so we have it staying about the same for the next few years, and then it really starts to jump as that large cohort class starts to hit high school. So you've got a few years, but we think you're probably kind of bursting at the seams a little bit now, is what we suspect.
5 years, over 1,000.
Yeah, that's almost another 100 kids up, and that's at a 1.28% growth, which is very, very conservative growth. What's much more modest growth than that is like 2%, right?
You saw 3% last year.
So if you factor in 2%, what does that do to us here?
Oh, it doesn't like it at all.
It gets rid of.
I put 1,000 and 2%. Sorry.
That's probably a little bit more.
That's a little bit dramatic. What am I doing here?
We need a lot of new buildings.
But if 2% is pretty modest, isn't it, Chad?
There it is now.
There you go. So it increases your issue at the high school more quickly. You still stay under the elementary total and the middle school total. But yeah, you're over capacity at the high school based on that current 932 master plan number starting next year with that 2% growth number.
So that 1,000 student mark comes in
3,
4 years.
yeah, as
It sounds
opposed to
like
5.
our numbers are higher than that already.
Yeah. So
they were last year.
Yeah. So, looking at that data, I think that as a, just lost my screen again. I think that as a district, we have to start considering what classroom options we have for that high school, because we know, we don't have the ability to go out and build a new high school. But that place is going to be busting at the seams. That cafeteria area is very small, and there's just not classroom space for all these kids. And that causes, as we know, there's associated issues with all of that, disciplinary issues and behavioral issues and potentially safety issues, and then any decisions we make on classrooms are going to be impactful for that front entrance decision making. But I think those are discussions we need to start having very, very soon as a board and administration. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yes.
So we'll provide this spreadsheet back to Dr. Hammock, and you guys can look at different models, projections, and obviously we'll be working as we kind of finish our work to look at classroom options as well. Architecturally, what are some solutions, and hopefully providing some rough order magnitude pricing for you all to consider it as well.
Is Board of Education members, do you folks have direction or thoughts? Or
yeah, but they're scary thoughts.
Well, go ahead.
I guess what I would be looking for is just be, what can we do at the high school now to, is there any additional space we can create from what we have now, even if we have to, to add some more spare. I know there's some spaces where we could possibly move into, but that would be the first one for me, because that looks like that's going to be the next.
Are you asking for additional classrooms then?
Yep.
Yeah. And that's kind of what we've been thinking with these folks.
So that's part of our task, is to find if there are available spaces that aren't currently being utilized as classroom areas that could be either renovated or reinvented as classrooms. And space that you already have, which is going to be your least expensive option moving forward. Renovating an existing space is, far more economical than building a new addition or anything like that. So trying to find those spaces if they exist. We're not convinced that they exist, just because you're fully utilizing that school in every nook and cranny. And so we're looking into that now. Again, this is kind of a progress snapshot in time of our work, and we're learning things every day. So I appreciate that, and we're working towards finding that magic space that solves your problems, for sure.
I think our goal is to provide you guys some options, and knowing that really the long-term play, and I know you've already been planning for a replacement high school, that needs to happen eventually. So not investing too much in the high school now, knowing that at some point you need to continue that planning to realize that. So I think that's the balance. How do we appropriately solve the issues that we're hearing in an economical way that makes sense for this community? So.
Thank you.
Thank you. We know you have other agenda items. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thanks for being here.
Okay, next on the agenda is several policy first readings.
And I'll go real quickly through these because there's policies and there's
policies.
There's a million attachments to all of these policies, but first one is a grading systems. Oh, excuse me, that's not my first one here. The first one is a safeguarding personal information policy. This is from, again, state of Colorado. And most of these are, again, this is a very first reading, so I won't, what I need to do is really just familiarize the board very quickly with these, and then I'll take those back to our administration. That's our process, where they will have input. Then I'll come back to you with, at a second reading with that input. I'll let you folks have input again, and then I'll come back to you on a third reading for approval. But this is safeguarding personal information. Again, not a lot of changes here, just because, again, most of these policies are governed by statute, and there's just not a lot of room for changing them. There is our second policy here is and there's several of these that regard English language learners. So again, Mrs. O'Connor will, obviously have significant input on this policy. Basically says here that you have to use that there are standards for how you identify English language learners, state-approved assessment, certified to the Colorado Department of Ed on students identified. We do all this information already, but again, there's a policy that regards that. Let me get out of there. Our third policy here is IKA. All the other attachment is just, and this is grading and assessment systems, and the requirements for grading and assessment systems under state of Colorado. And you can again go down here and see how that is explained through this policy. The fourth policy upgrade is a regulation that attaches to grading and assessment systems, and it again here it notes that students and parents have the right, or parents have the right to request an exemption, and then it talks about distribution of what we're required to do with distribution of information on these assessments. The fourth policy is an exhibit. Let me see that, get that to open. So you have regulations, you have an exhibit. This is denial, admission, and denial of admission. Again, and we just talked about this recently, or we've talked about this several times again, but here is denial of admission based on age. Again, typically you don't want a 19 or 20-year-old student in your building. Denial of admission based on being expelled from a previous school district. Residency requirements. And then that policy is also speaking to Exceptional Children's Act. And I think there's two more. There's the exhibit. There is student withdrawal from school policy. Oops, yeah.
Does that include JH, which is student absences and excuses?
Oh yeah, did I pass that one up? Excuse me. Where did I miss that?
I don't think you've gotten to it yet.
The JF policies start to regard, there's a lot of these policies that are regarding students that are in foster care placement or that are homeless students. That's why I did not duplicate some of these attachments. Here's a JH policy, student absences and excuses. And again, this is pretty standard language, but you have an option there for optional language about and noting that you cannot address academic penalties for unexcused absences. Also asks the district to determine a number of days before they make a refer a child for compulsory educational or judicial proceedings on compulsory education. Talks about makeup work, again, which we've talked a lot about the fact that even with an unexcused absence, that you get to do makeup work. Let me see here. Student absences and excuses policy. Here's all your excused absences. Here's your unexcused absences. Here's your definition for chronic absenteeism. And here is an eligibility policy for extracurricular activities. So again, what I'll do is allow the board to look at all these. I'll forward to the board requests for modifications to those policies, and then I'll bring those back to the administration, and I'll come back with a pretty concise document at that point about actual recommendations for changes. Okay?
Thank you. Next on the agenda is cost for classified day and discussion on paying for additional days for the 2018-29 school year.
Mike, do you want to talk about these?
I'm sorry?
You want to talk about this information? Just about the.
Oh, okay, I'm with you now.
Yeah, just about the.
Just a recap of what our.
Right.
What one day of our.
What one day
classified
actually
salary would
costs.
be If a additional snow day was granted, it's ballpark about 23,000. That's for a sample of April payroll.
And I know this has come up this year because we've had an unusual number of absent days. We've had a pretty tough winter. In accordance with our agreement between our classified staff group, they are, correct me if I'm wrong, they're paid for 2 days. And then we had an additional 4 this year. Yeah, we had 6 total, so we had an additional 4. So we had a request from one of our members of our Board of Education to give the Board of Education a cost on what 1 day for our classified staff comes to. And that's what Mr. Lee has provided here, about $23,000. And then I have an action item on here for the Board of Education to make a determination on what do we want to do about that? Do we want to? Well, I'll let you folks figure out how you want to word that. You could do nothing. You could make a choice to reimburse or to fund up to all 4 days if you wanted to. That's.
So just because we've been talking about this quite a bit with the group, just so that the understanding is there. So there were the 6 days. There were the agreement is that they would be paid for 2 snow days. There was a 3rd day that was a half day that they were paid for the hours that they were worked, correct?
Yeah, the language in the master agreement, so the first snow day that occurred, the school was called off well before the day started. They got that full day. The second snow day that occurred, and this would have been in February, there was an early release. In the master agreement language, it states that it's treated as a snow day, so they got the full snow day plus any hours that they worked that day. So that, in essence, fulfilled their 2 paid snow days. And then there were a combination of early releases and or full snow days that went unpaid, and staff either had to use a personal day, a vacation day, or take it unpaid.
And I guess when we get ready for the action item, we'll have to figure that out. My opinion is that I believe we should at least split the difference with the employees. I think we should give something to the employees who come to work every day, and even though it's not part of the agreement, fiscally we have the money to do it. I think it's the appropriate thing to do for our employees, personally.
I think an additional 2 days is a good idea.
Yeah, because it's not like you can't control the weather.
Mhm. So when we get to that action item, we'll just have somebody make a motion, and then we'll vote on it as that motion comes forward. Any other discussion on that?
So is this something that we should be adjusting the master agreement then?
Well, the language, I was thinking it was every other year, but it's actually, there'll be 2 more years, right, Deb, before? So-
18, we should be doing language. But I was under the understanding that anything that affected wages would be brought up any year. And definitely something like this affects wages, you know. The classified would very much like to be assured those days we agree to work, and I know we've had some discussion about that agreement is different than a contract. We realize that, but the at-will employees agree that they're going to be there every day. We would like them on those emergency closure days to receive those wages they're expecting. They expect to be there. They certainly need the cash inflow, or cash flow. So we would like to see them on emergency closure days. Just get a gracious gift from you.
Okay. Okay, moving on. OCR complaint, the OCR letter of response and OCR agreement.
Yeah, there was an OCR, our Office for Civil Rights complaint that was filed regarding the Converge Day Treatment Center. And our school district was named along with, how many school districts?
There were 6.
6? Yeah, so 6 additional districts were named that all send students to the Converge Day Treatment Center. And we've worked with our attorney, Beth Friel, for, what is she, Beth, what's her other district? I'm trying to think what our other attorney is. John.
Oh, Semple Farrington?
No, the
Is
other
that-
group.
Oh, it's on the tip of my tongue.
Yeah, I know.
can't remember it. Oh, my goodness. Yeah, that's
Yeah, Kaplan and Ernst.
Thank you.
Kaplan Ernst, she's our special education attorney, and she's the attorney actually for a number of the districts that work, or Kaplan and Ernst is the legal firm for a number of these districts that had sent students to Converge. Our feeling is our resolution agreement on this was solid. Basically, it said that because again, Converge was unable to provide services to a number of our kids. They had financial issues, they had staffing issues out there, and they just and they were unable to provide the services, the related services to our students that were placed there. We had 4 students placed, 5 students placed, 4 students. So you heard from Lisa say earlier that that we are moving forward for 2019-20 to make sure that we provide appropriate services for those students on our end. And again, basically, that's what this resolution agreement says, that any compensatory services that they did not get in this term, compensatory is not financial compensatory. It's that if a student needed physical therapy services and wasn't getting it, or social work services, you have to provide a compensatory attempt to make them whole. You have to go out and get those social work services. You have to go out and find those physical therapy services and make that student whole. That's what OCR wants you to do. And so when I talked to Beth, she said, Dr. Hammock, and when I talked to Lisa, she said, I think this is a very fair resolution from OCR They're basically saying, hey, whatever needs to be done on behalf of those students, the district is agreeing to go get that done. Well, that's what we do anyhow. So it's nothing above and beyond what we would do anyway. And so that's really where that OCR case has ended up, and we've signed that agreement and we're moving forward. Anything you want to add?
There's documents that we'll have to submit to show that we're meeting all of those terms, but we'll have that done pretty quickly.
Okay. Thank you. Next is Board of Education retreat. Dates for consideration, August 20th through the 22nd and August 26th through the 29th. It says determine 2 dates. Are we looking to?
So Derek and I met, and just what I would like is what Derek and I both talked about is just an opportunity in August, because I know everybody's summer just gets hugely, just gets so busy. And then I think there's a agriculture fair around that time of the year, isn't that right, beginning of August? There's a county agriculture fair. So what we would like to do is find a time when the Board of Education and district administration and myself can get together. I've reached out to the gentleman from McPherson, Jacobson, Mr. Ritter, to serve kind of as a to kind of lead that, so that I can be participating with you folks and our district administration can participate. And the focus would simply be to talk about what our goals are, talk about how we're going to progress monitor that we're achieving our goals for our school district. So I don't expect you to have answers this evening, but if you can look at those dates, and what I'll do is I will send you out some information so that we can try to land on a couple different dates, so that that Mr. Ritter can align his schedule and you folks can look at your schedules. We would do it during the week, so we're not having you come in on a Saturday.
So just one evening?
It would just be one evening, from kind of like a work session, 5:30 to 8:30, and we'd have a meal for you and talk about goals and talk about how we'll progress monitor those goals with the Board of Education over the course of the school year.
So perhaps if you just send an email to everybody, we can respond with dates we'd be available. And
Yeah,
then
I think we'll send you out some sort of interactive calendar where you can you can mark on several dates, and then I can tell you which one you chose.
Okay. Okay. Next is a consent agenda. Has a personnel action report and a list of checks.
I'd move to accept the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Terry Lapp. Aye. Trish McLean.
Aye.
Todd Schneider.
Aye.
Lauren Sharp.
Aye.
Melissa Smith.
Aye.
Connie Weingarten.
Aye.
Okay, moving on to action items. Consideration to approve policy GDKA, length of support staff workday on second reading.
Move to approve.
I'll second.
Any other discussion?
That was just a change to reflect actual hours.
Okay, roll call, please.
Terry Lapp. Aye. Trish McLean.
Aye.
Todd Schneider.
Aye.
Lauren Sharp.
Aye.
Melissa Smith.
Aye.
Connie Weingarten.
Aye.
Okay, next is a consideration to approve the policies from CASB on the first reading that were discussed earlier. All of those policies. I'm not going to read them all. What is the pleasure of the board?
I move to approve the reading of the policies from CASB for the first reading.
Second.
Any other discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Terry Lapp. Aye. Trish McLean.
Aye.
Todd Schneider.
Aye.
Lauren Sharp.
Aye.
Melissa Smith.
Aye.
Connie Weingarten.
Aye.
Next is consideration to approve payments to classified staff for emergency closure days beyond the 2 days as specified in the agreement between ACP and the district. Entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
So do we have to put in there
You need to
specifics?
determine.
Approve how many days?
2. That's what we decided, right?
So motion is to approve 2 days in beyond the 2 days as specified in the agreement.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay. Roll call, please.
Terry Lapp. Aye. Trish McLean.
Aye.
Todd Schneider.
Aye.
Lauren Sharp.
Aye.
Melissa Smits.
Aye.
Connie Weingarten.
Aye.
Okay.
Mr. President, Pro Tem, just a quick comment. We'll probably have to submit a request to para to determine what the appropriate coverage of that payment would be, if that's in or out for para. So we'll need to know that before we can process that. And payroll is right around the corner, so we'll have to see what response is from para before we can make that payment.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Next is consideration to approve the Board of Education meeting schedule for 2019-2020, including regular meetings, special meetings, and work sessions. Should have a calendar of those dates in front of you.
And what, yeah, Bev's got all our dates on here, regular meeting, work sessions, and special meetings. And Bev, this is just a rollover from our dates this year, right? Correct. Okay.
I move to approve the meeting schedule for 2019-20.
A second.
Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Terry Lapp. Aye. Trish McLean.
Aye.
Todd Schneider.
Aye.
Lauren Sharp.
Aye.
Melissa Smits.
Aye.
Connie Weingarten.
Aye.
Next is consideration to approve the District Accountability Committee 2018-2019 DAC meeting dates. Should also have those in front of you.
Those are here.
Move to approve those dates.
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Terry Lapp. Aye. Trish McLean.
Aye.
Todd Schneider.
Aye.
Lauren Sharp.
Aye.
Melissa Smits.
Aye.
Connie Weingarten.
Aye.
Okay, consideration to approve the list of graduates for the class of 2019 for the Fort Morgan High School.
Move to approve.
Did I? Oh, excuse me. They're there.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Terry Lapp. Aye. Trish McLean.
Aye.
Todd Schneider.
Aye.
Lauren Sharp.
Aye.
Melissa Smits.
Aye.
Connie Weingarten.
Aye.
I didn't actually count those. Was there
I
about
was going to ask what the
200?
total count was.
200. And next item, consideration to approve the list of graduates for the class of 2019 for Lincoln High School.
I did count them.
Move to approve.
A second.
Any discussion? Said you did count those?
Yeah. That's
Okay.
pretty easy. I can count that, aye.
Okay, roll call, please.
Terry Lapp. Aye. Trish McLean.
Aye.
Todd Schneider.
Aye.
Lauren Sharp.
Aye.
Melissa Smits.
Aye.
Connie Weingarten.
Aye.
Okay, next up is consideration to approve the Colorado State Board of Education School District Accreditation Contract, Fort Morgan RE-3 accredited with improvement plan.
That's just a, that's a document that's generated by State of Colorado. They give your district an overall rating, and that's what it is.
I move to approve.
And you have to sign it.
I'll second.
Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Terry Lapp. Aye. Trish McLean.
Aye.
Todd Schneider.
Aye.
Lauren Sharp.
Aye.
Melissa Smits.
Aye.
Connie Weingarten.
Aye.
Okay, advanced planning. Have a regular meeting May 20th at 7. Work session on May 13th.
I was going to say, with the number of items that's on everybody's schedule, I was going to ask the board, do you want to meet next week?
I will be out of town, so I will not be here for Monday.
I will not be here on Monday either.
Why, is that okay if we just put that one on hold at this time?
That work session?
Yeah.
Yes.
I just think it gets,
May is different.
May gets to
Yeah.
be,
It is.
May gets to be tough for everyone's schedules, and I saw that and I said, wow, that's a tough time for everybody.
Okay, so we will not have the work
We
session.
will not
on
have the
May
work
13th.
session.
Mighty Mustang Award Ceremony at the Fort Morgan High School on May 8th at 6 p.m. Fort Morgan High School Class of 2019 Senior Banquet is May 9th. Graduation for Lincoln High School is May 10th. Graduation for the high school is May 18th. Continuation ceremony for the Fort Morgan Middle School at the Glenn Miller Auditorium at Fort Morgan High School is going to be May 22nd. The end of the year staff picnic and service awards presentation is May 24th, and the last day of school also May 24th. Now,
And I would just say the Board of Education should have received invitations to all of our graduation ceremonies. And we have your seating up at the front with all those ceremonies. So there should be no question about where you're sitting. Well, there is no question. And you get to sit by me.
Derek.
Okay.
on that note, I'll entertain a motion to go to executive session for determination of positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, development of strategy for negotiations, and instruction of negotiators, except that discussion of negotiations relating to collective bargaining or employment contracts shall occur in a public meeting unless an executive session is otherwise allowed under CRS 24-6-402, subsection 4, subsection E.
I'm so moved that we go to executive session and invite Dr. Hammock, Mike Boyer, Mike Lee to attend.
There's a second one, too.
Second.
Is there seconds for that?
Oh, I'll second it.
Okay.
Sorry.
Any further discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Terry Lapp, aye. Trish McLean,
Aye.
Todd Schneider,
Aye.
Lauren Sharp,
Aye.
Melissa Smith,
Aye.
Connie Weingarten.
Aye.
Okay, then I'll also entertain a motion, I guess, for personnel matters, except if an employee who is a subject of an executive session requests an open meeting. If the personnel matter involves more than one employee, all of the employees must request an open meeting. Discussion of personnel policies that do not require discussion of matters specific to particular employees are not considered personnel matters pursuant to CRS 24-6-402, subsection 4, subsection F.
And?
I move we approve to go to that second executive section and invite Dr. Hammock.
I second.
Any other further discussion? Roll call, please.
Terry Lapp, aye. Trish McLean,
Aye.
Todd Schneider,
Aye.
Lauren Sharp,
Aye.
Melissa Smith,
Aye.
Connie Weingarten.
Aye.
Okay.
Hey, Bev, before we close now this evening, you're going to be distributing teacher appreciation.
I have the gifts that I can follow you guys into the executive session. You guys can decide who's going to go what location.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're aware that did that go real well today for the breakfasts, for the breakfast? Yeah. Yeah, again, just Carol Tremolin and her staff have been great on getting a breakfast this entire week to all of our people. And I want to thank the Board of Education for distributing these gift cards. Thank you so much, folks. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, this meeting is adjourned.
Break the mallet.